expand your movie viewing lens as we explore cinematic horizons, global perspectives, where storytelling knows no borders. Let's dive into the world of film from every corner of the globe.
Let's introduce our first speaker, Kanako Nishi. Words that linger, emotions that cut deep and redefine the contours of modern Japanese storytelling, one beautifully nuanced tale at a time. Kanako Nishi is a literary force that weaves stories with fluidity of language and the depth of lived experience. A celebrated Japanese writer and artist known for her diverse body of work that includes novels, essays, and short stories, and children's books. Known for her evocative prose and playful use of the Osaka dialect, Nishi crafts stories that explore identity, human connection, and the quiet complexities of everyday life. Her breakout novel, Saraba, earned her prestigious Naoki Prize in 2015, cementing her place in the contemporary Japanese literature. She also seen her stories adapted into critically acclaimed films, including Sakura and Fortune Favors Lady Nikuko.
Dr. Rupleena Bose, a professor, filmmaker, and storyteller extraordinaire. Rupleena Bose is the author of the acclaimed new novel Summer of Then by Penguin India, a celebrated English literature professor at Sri Venkateshwara College, University of Delhi. Dr. Bose holds a doctorate in music studies, proving that her talents span far beyond the written word. She's not just an academic, she's a National Film Award winning writer whose 2012 non-fiction film, You Don't Belong, captivated audience and critics alike.
Dr. Puja Raj navigates this intricate landscape where philosophy meets the pulse of contemporary culture. She is an assistant professor from Alliance School of Liberal Arts and Humanities. Dr. Puja holds a PhD from the prestigious University of Delhi.
And Ankit, who didn't get an introduction, he is one of our interpreter for Kanako here. So a big round of applause for him as well, because without him, I don't think how we would have made it possible. So when we talk about cinema, it's something which is considered as very global, at the same time very local. But it translates into something as language. And the two of the people that we are having here, they have written about the cinema, they have written ideas, and their work has somehow connected very beautifully in cinematic world. So having that, we want to actually look into this aspect that when we talk about cinema, and so when it transcends certain border, because Kanako here is from Japan, and I believe most of us are very big fan of Japanese animes and films all around. But when we talk about when the Japanese cinema or any cinema in certain manner transcend border, who is telling those stories? What is the meaning behind it? What is the culture behind it? What is the impact of a certain character in that film or in a certain story? So that's the one conversation that we want to dwell in, and the fact that who shapes the narrative. Is it directors who are providing the story to the audience, or audience's idea are the one which directors are imbibing and converting into a cinematic world? So having said that, let's just start with a very small and personal note that I want to know what was the first incident or one of the first film that made you realize the power of cinema as a cultural force and how it translates from literature itself. Because Kanako, you write literature and your books have been adapted into cinema. So so in that manner, what was your first film which brought the idea of cinema as the power for you?
Yes, let me try to talk in English. My English really poor, so please bear with me. I have reliable guy in here, so yeah. Okay. Yes. As you told them, some of my novels were adapted into movies, and first of all, I am huge fan of movie itself. Mm-hmm. So I am huge fan of movies. So it is always blessing for me that my novel is into the movies, and so when I see my novel at first time, the more I focus on my movie, the more I forget that I was writing this novel. So yeah, I was like, oh, I know this line, but why I know this line? Oh, because I wrote it. So such a very weird and funny moment, and also the super happy moment for me. So the movie always encouraged me, yeah.
She was also asking, any one particular movie which you saw as a kid which really made you like want to do movies? I think that's, yeah, because I'm going to answer that.
Okay, so you mean my novel? No?
A film that
Film,
that
okay,
you watched.
generally
Yeah,
film.
any film, like a childhood favorite, like which, yes, if you have one.
It's so tough question, right?
Yeah,
For you?
yeah, it is.
Can you answer it?
I can answer it.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Oh, let me know. Let me know.
Yeah. So, yeah, like answering the question and why I wanted your opinion, because I'm wondering what would be an important, influential movie of somebody who's growing up in Japan. Because for me, I will give the most cliched answer in the universe. I think the most interesting movie which had an impact on me as a child and wanted me, I felt like, cinema and novels are somewhere close yet so apart. I mean, it's like what Kanako said, that when you're writing, it feels so simple. And when you see your work on screen, it feels like, oh my God, it's almost as if it's magical. Somebody else has done it, right? So that feeling is very unique. And the movie, I think, what you said, I would say Satyajit Ray, and I would say Pather Panchali. I know it's the most cliched answer, and I'm hoping you'll forgive me for it. But honestly, it is like a very important movie, because it's adapted from a novel, Bibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay's novel. And the movie, it's called Pather Panchali, and it translates as Song of the Road. And it was a part at a time, it came in, I think, 1951, 51 or 56. The point being that it was in tandem with the global movements of cinema, which is neorealism. And I think that is something which sort of, in a way, put India in the sort of global map. And the other film which was very important to me was Cinema Paradiso. It's a film about...
Mine too.
About watching a film. It's about this little boy who is at, makes friends with this projector guy. And he's just seeing life through that, like, projector, old world. And that cinema and that's the magical aspect of cinema is something that you discover. It's again 1950s, I think.
Those who have not watched it, please do watch Cinema Paradiso. It's an Italian film. It's a must watch. You would love it. Just love it. So coming back.
Me too. Yeah,
Yes.
Cinema Paradiso was
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
So coming back to you, Kanako. With your work being adapted into multiple films, how involved are you from transition of your film books into novel? And do you feel cinema captures the nuances of your stories, the characters, the the vision that you had in your mind when you are writing a particular scene in a certain situation? And how did the adaptation process itself impact your original vision, or was it vice versa?
Okay. どうやって私の小説が映画になってどれぐらい関わっててっていうことですね。Okay. Yes. As I told you that I am huge fan of movie itself, and I am professional writer, but I am not the professional movie staff, right? So all I can do is finding someone that I can trust in the movie. And if I find the director or other stuff, it's done. I completely rely on them, and they can make movie, and that is not, the novel. So I can say novel is novel, and movie is movie in good way, and so I don't be involved anything in it. Even I don't promote it. So yeah, and also about my novel into movie, I felt sometimes I felt weird, I just wrote the character in my mind, so no one knows the appearance of characters. But when it become a movie, everyone knows, oh, this character is like this character is like this. So sometimes I felt, weird. Oh, she is like this. Oh, I knew this first time. Yeah. So it's so weird. Yeah.
I get it. So coming back to you, Rupleena, on this one, you have worked extensively on cinema, the cultural and the critique as well, and Bollywood. And what we see is that, coming back to Indian cinema, especially Bollywood, when if you talk about, has this global perception about, there's a global perception about Bollywood and Hindi cinema about being too masala, being too dramatic, trying to kind of overemphasize certain aspects, certain emotion. However, in Indian cinematic industry, we see that these emotions are largely, justified because people are dramatic. So, but at the same time, Indian cinemas are being considered sideline on these note. So when we talk about Indian cinema reaching the global platform, because we are trying to understand the global perspective here, how do you see, and what kind of hurdles are there for Indian cinema? And because it's sometimes when we see Bollywood cinema not making to the international level, but if they are regional films, there was a recently one of the film called All We Imagine as Light has been nominated for Golden Globe Award. So we have some certain independent films, regional films, which are making recognition and getting recognition at the international platform. How do you see this transition happening, and what is stopping Bollywood as such?
So I think one thing we should understand about Bombay cinema, and I would say Bombay cinema, and without, because that's how I always said and I write it, which is that Bombay cinema, unlike the Western, every cinematic tradition is like a representation of their country. Bombay cinema comes from the theatre tradition. Indian cinema has to have song and dance because it is directly evolving from the Nautanki tradition, right? The tradition of the dramatic, the tradition of singing and dancing on stage. The Nautanki is a particular form of theatre, which is like very animated theatre, which goes back to the 19th century, and broadly cinema sort of comes from that. Cinema, it adapts itself into cinema over the years. Western cinema is again different because technologically, during the age of modernism, early 20th century, it was the photograph, the photograph which went into the moving image. So silence is a very important part of Western cinema, while the whole song and dance tradition of the past, of Nautanki, of the village theatre, essentially the rural commune theatre was something which was like the sort of the subconscious of Indian Bombay cinema, Hindi cinema. Having said that, obviously it progresses. Now, I would like to say cinema should represent everybody, and which is why some films which Bombay cinema is not really about representation. It's about a form of entertainment. It's obviously something we have heard forever, which is escaping from reality. Because of course, reality is very difficult. I mean, you're like in a train for hours. You have a very small flat. You have terrible weather. Bangalore is great weather, but yeah, other places have terrible weather, like Delhi, extreme heat, extreme cold, and there's violence and aggression. What do? You escape, and it is not as calm, or even like, if I may say, even as sort of accommodative of quirks and silences and loneliness as Japanese society is. Indian society is so diverse that it cannot really be accommodative of any one thing. It's just simply plural and diverse and impossible to contain in one thing, which is why what you see as Bombay cinema does not make sense to somebody living in a Paris, or somebody living in, like, it doesn't make sense to me living in Delhi, because that's not me. When I see All We Imagine as Light, or when I see a film like Dhobi Ghat is the first one I can think of, it's almost 1 decade old, or when I see like All We Imagine as Light is the new one. So yes. So when I see a modern contemporary film about this young woman, about desire and love, and and then finally like finding that, I feel this is representing me, not Bombay cinema. Unfortunately, that language is a very particular language. It's like a country which is so diverse. So an All We Imagine as Light or an independent cinema is still a very minuscule part of the larger Indian economy, because remember, cinema is always, and that's where like novel is so much fun. Like, I'm a novelist. You don't have to care about the market, actually. You write what you want to write. I think it's so liberating. In India, cinema is about the market. It's about the target audience. There's big money at stake. And a big money will only be spent for like 20 million, like 200 million people. 20 million people 10 million people, not 40 people, who would find representation as a very unique niche independent film, right? So I mean, it's a long answer, but I hope I answered that.
Yeah, definitely. So coming back to you, Kanako, I want to kind of mix two questions that I have. That Japanese cinema or literature has always been very profound in expressing emotions, even be it silence for a very long shot, be it any dramatic scene. Everything has been very, profoundly presented as well as written down as well. So, but when you explore in your work the human emotions and the cultural identity and the navigation and the tension between the tradition and the modernity, the migration and the belonging and everything all around, do you feel that cinema, especially Asian cinema, has a greater responsibility now to showcase this shifting reality? Because as we, Rupleena was rightly mentioning it, that when we try to escape from certain kind of reality, but what we see is that with the silence in Japanese cinema, you are meant to indulge into that conversation that is happening. You are meant to feel what the character is feeling. So in that emotion, how do you see, anything surprisingly happening in cinematic world and Asia bringing especially Japanese cinema, and even now, Rupleena just mentioned the movie As We Imagine as Light. These silences are important. So do you think Asian cinema are bringing this shift in the cinematic horizon?
Okay, yes. I first of all, I totally agree with you. Cinema and the movie should be diverse. And I am very embarrassed that when a few years ago, I had only one image of Indian movie. Everyone is dancing, so vibrant. But yeah, I watched the movie, the titled Three Idiots or The Lunchbox or other one. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed. I forgot the title. And I changed my mind. Oh, okay, I had only one image of India, right? And you said, and Japanese movie as well, So for example, I am coming from Japan with my fellow authors, Kyoko Nakajima, Asako Yuzuki, and Erika Kobayashi, and we can be lumped together that Japanese female writers. But we each write different things, right? Exactly. Completely different. So we are so diverse. So movie itself should be diverse too. Maybe you have some image of Japanese movie, silent, very, read between the lines. But we do have, of course, very entertaining movie, action, dancing too. Not all Indians love dancing, right? So the same, not all Japanese are so introverted. For example, I'm so open, so so yeah, I can say movie should be diverse. Yeah.
All right. So coming back to you, Rupleena, like when we are talking about this global recognition, many of the Korean cinema are winning Oscars. Japanese anime has dominated the world for a very long time. Even in 2024, we had
You'll have Miyazaki fan clubs all over India. Everybody loves them.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And Kurosawa, interestingly,
I know. Exactly.
throne of blood to the university.
I
kids.
know.
So talking about Miyazaki, I have named my cat Ponyo because I was so inspired by that. Yes. So coming back to that question, because when we have this global image of these films, we somehow, see that niche idea, that story, what you were talking about, having a representation, having that connect in a story, in a certain story, in a certain film, which is largely missing in Bollywood. So what kind of barriers do you think Asian films or especially if I would say Indian films have to kind of break to reach that global barrier that is there, and what kind of other struggle that they have to go through in order to be recognized?
I think that the essential barrier is the lack of state funding. The fact that you do not have, which we had a very strong alternative cinema tradition in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Post Satyajit Ray, with the establishment of NFDC, where stories told were, like different kind of stories about real life, middle class life, protest movements, love, anger, like cities, city life, and not rural India. So you had the NFDC, which was very, which was very active. Unfortunately, that that's something which has changed over the years. So and you're entirely dependent on market forces. No art can survive with entire dependence on market forces. Like it's simply not possible. So I think that is the first thing, which is the hurdle, which is the like defined and sort of plan of action and encouragement towards like essentially independent films, which is the production of independent films. Also story, like film is, it's very interesting, when you like sort of write films or when you work in the space of films, you will see that film is always seen as it's a mass medium. It's not a novel. You're not quietly reading it. You're watching it amidst a lot of people. So that is something which is, which has to be accounted for, I think, in when you're looking at the larger global perspective. That to think that it's not just the Indian audience watching it, people all over the world with their, specific situation, mindset will be watching it. So a story has to, the importance should be on a story which is local, particular, and which transcends borders. I think that's where we are sort of missing out on.
Yeah. So coming back to, taking the point for what Rupleena was mentioning about state funding. And what I know is that one of your work has been funded by the government and certain foundation to to adapt into a cinema. So how do you see, these two ideas coming together when you write from a creative end, and how it gets, funded by the government, by certain foundation to make it a kind of a something which reaches larger audience, at the same time not losing the meaning that you have created in your work, but at the same time transcend to the larger audience?
Okay, it's so tough. Yeah. But even the movie is coming, but my novel hasn't changed. I already finished it. So actually, I don't care the movie itself. I just love movies. But yeah, sometimes the more I concerned is about environment of movie. I present them not to have any harassment or sexual harassment and environment of making movie. Only one order from me to that. Yeah.
On set, you mean
Yeah.
on set, it has to be like a safe environment.
Yes,
right?
yes, that's right.
That's a very interesting point to have as a writer, because you don't have control over the text, but you can at least have control over that one thing.
Yes,
I think,
that's
right?
Yeah.
All right, so then I'll have one more question, and then we'll have one last question which I'll open to everyone. So Rupleena, when I want to especially focus with this idea that because you have a very critical lens of understanding cinema. So but at the same time, when we are transcending the borders, there's also a live online streaming platforms are a big chain of reaction for that. So with the rise of this streaming platform, there we are saying. And what in contemporary time, what we call it as democratization of the global cinema, while others believe that it's a Western controlled market. So I was just raising the same question other day as well, that when you watch a certain film, like if I watch something by Miyazaki, I'll get multiple other options watching something similar to that. So when we are living in a world like that, how do you see that the market of online streaming platform is being controlled in a certain manner, or is it being dictating us to watch certain thing?
Oh, you mean the algorithm? Of course,
Not the algorithm, but where do you think this debate stands, whether Asian films get to have the same attention as something which is very popular? So, say for example, if a movie gets released on Netflix today, it will be popping up on on my first page, but there are multiple films from different parts of the world are getting released every day. So those don't get recognition, but something which gets recognition also is being controlled by someone who wants to have, the marketized value certain place. So what do you say to that?
I think recognition, first of all, is a very tricky notion. What you think everybody is watching on Netflix, you'd be surprised, actually. People are watching all kinds. I don't want to watch Netflix. I watch movie. I don't want to watch Netflix. It's the same stories. Also, Netflix India is, is very different because it's a particular kind of story. It's also for what the market that you are. So as I said, you cannot, I'm not a film critic. I'll clarify that. I did write on films a bit, but essentially about city and cinema, because because it's very different when you are on set And when there is the whole production dynamics of it, everything changes. You know, you have to look at film from the perspective of the actual physical production of it, because you know, that's something which is very important. And a lot of dynamics, like what kind of stories are being told, is also governed with things like budget and, you know, which actors are agreeing, what is the image of India you want, you know, that is to be shown. So the Netflix algorithm that we're talking about what is popular is also not the only reality. There are many things, like for example, Lunchbox is a very, very popular film. Like,
No,
you know,
really?
it's a lovely film. So I think that's a Monsoon Wedding, Mississippi Masala. Those are, like, you go outside, people know 2 films: Pather Panchali, Mississippi Masala, Monsoon Wedding, Lunchbox, and now this one, All We Imagine Is Light. So there is a much larger world, even in the online streaming space, than the ones that we are seeing. You know, our sort of algorithm is also getting limited. I think that's the problem of this OTT, which is very challenging. You feel that this is successful. Actually, you know, success is very, I don't know, it's transient. It's also very limited to pockets, I think, if I could explain it.
Definitely, definitely. So coming back to you, Kanako, with this question that, you know, one of your book, which got adapted as, say animated film, is called Fortune Favor Lady Nikako. So if you have not watched it, please look up for the trailer which is available. I got to see that as well. So when we talk about this particular film, it is often dismissed as something which belongs to a younger audience. But in that film, especially in that book, you have tackled very deep emotions and complex themes about someone's insecurity, what they feel, and everything around. So all these human complications, which are not just only available to younger audience, but to everyone, despite of their ages. And once, if a book or the film gets kind of limited to the younger audience, how do you feel, and what do you feel about animation in Japan, and more effectively about the medium of social critique? Because through that film and through that novel, you have questioned a lot of social construction as well. So what would you say to that?
Okay. As you told them, my novel, Fortune Favor Lady Nikako. Yes, you can see on the dairy this month and next month. Yeah. So if you have time, I think in Japan, animation is not only for kids. Yeah, many adults love animation, like Miyazaki or other thing, but at the same time, we have to divide that. This movie should be only for adult. This movie should only for kids. Yeah, it's of course, but yeah, animation is a good example that is really open to everyone. I think that is kind of blessing of cinema, like Cinema Palazzo. You can enjoy, even you are old, you are young, you are kids. That is amazing thing for me. Is this the answer for you? Is it?
Yeah,
right?
that's what.
Yeah. Thank you.
So with one binding question, that when we are seeing cinema has reflected cultural identity, but we are living in a very globalized world with a globalized content. Everything is transcending from one moment to another, to one end of the world to another. So, and at the same time, what we are seeing is that we are also somehow heading towards a harmonized global cinema. When we talk about what makes global cinema, that we're talking about certain kind of criteria, adaptability, and other things around. So with that, do you think we are moving towards a richer diversity, or something which is again coming to one monotonous understanding of global cinema? A closing remark from both of you.
Yeah, you mean like there's a homogenization, that's what you're saying, right? So it's like, what do you want to see about the West is also, or what do you want to see about the East? Of course, there's a notion that, East is seen, India is looked at in a particular way, which is, a country of lack, but it is a country of lack, it's true. And, what you want to see from the West is also a particular kind of a gaze. So the whole idea of gaze is what you're talking about, I think. But I do think that a lot of like brilliant movies now are completely like, you just have to find them. I think there is the onus of finding, which is very important. And which is why I want to actually say that, for example, you can't talk about Asia without the way you look at Asia without talking about Wong Kar-wai. Because before Wong Kar-wai, you had no vocabulary of how to like represent Asia with those colors, the lights. You were always trying to like emulate something, and that sort of changed the language of cinema. And I think that is where we are. You have to constantly change the language of cinema for it to stay relevant and for it to be particular, universal, and local, of course. I think I did not answer the question. But
No, I got your answer.
yeah,
Because
and which is why, no, I was coming to my point, which is where you will not be homogeneous, because each Wong Kar-wai film you look at, In the Mood for Love, Happy Together, each is like very specific. It's like, Hong Kong, which is like literally like bubbling there,
Or
but
Chungking Express.
or Chungking Express, or but it's all different stories.
Yeah.
So that is something that you can achieve, and it must be achieved by cinematic forces. But of course, the market is a very important player in cinema, and without state and arts council support, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, yes, we have to think why we call, Asian cinema or African cinema as a country cinema global. Because it means it was not global, right? And we never called American Hollywood movie global. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was like assumed that
right?
it is global, and this is like a special impact.
Yeah, so maybe we can get out of English-centered word. This is not excuse, right? I am not good at English, but, we can get out of English-centered, American-centered. So we can be all global now, right?
Yes, definitely. We are living in a world, and that's why, this entire conversation about Asian century seems more and more relevant, that we are trying to bring that shift all together.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll just take one question if anyone has in.
So my question is to Kanako, Miss
thank you.
Kanako.
Yes.
Yeah, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
So my question is, like in most of the movies, multiple movies I would say, these films are centered towards the societal reflection. They reflect what, societal structure is like. Then I would ask you, what factors motivated you to write a novel that really pushed the creative boundaries in this world of AI? So what are those factors? I would like to know.
Okay, AI is improving, of course, but look at us. My body hasn't changed for, over 1,000 years, right? So, we are just a human being. I am writer, I am woman, but before it, I am human. So, and also, I love observing myself from inside, right? So I always start from it. Oh, what I think when I have such a situation, and I am always observing from inside me. So maybe my team is myself. It's very minimum team for me, and very sustainable, right? So yeah, can I answer that? Is okay? Oh, thank you.
So thank you, everyone. This idea of cinema reaching to the global platform is very important, and I think we have dwelled into some of the very relevant questions. Thank you, everyone.